Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are joining us for The Connected Worker. My name is Nicole Bamford, and I'm the moderator for today's session. On behalf of Leslie, Angeliki, Quinn, and I, we thank you for joining us for day one of the event. This presentation, How to Handle the Upcoming Great Crew Change Challenge with a Connected Worker Strategy, will be given by Sri Karthik, Senior Vice President of Solution Engineering at Innovapptive, and Jason Hunt, Senior IT Solutions Analyst at ConocoPhillips. Before we get started, here are some quick administrative points. During the webinar, if you have questions for the presenters, please submit them in the Q&A box on your screen, and these will be answered during the questions session after the presentation. Likewise, for any technical issues, please write them into the Q&A section, and we'll get to them right away. The widgets on your screen can be resized and dragged around for your viewing preference. We encourage you to visit the Resource Center on your screen for additional content and resources we and our sponsors have provided for you. So make sure you're sitting comfortably, and now I'll hand it over to Sri so we can get started.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, Jason, for joining us today. When we first met last year, you were in the middle of gathering information and doing your due diligence around what connected worker solutions were available in the market. Since then, you've come a long way and kicked off your connected worker project in Alaska. We would love for you to share your journey with the audience today, and I look forward to the discussion, Jason. Why don't we get started with you introducing yourself and tell us more about the ConocoPhillips operations in Alaska that you support.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Sri, again for having me on, and for everybody else who's called in today to listen to us chat a little bit about the connected worker. So my name is Jason Hunt. Like Nicole mentioned, I'm a senior solutions analyst here in our Alaska business unit. I've been up here for probably about 3 years or so, and my main role up here really is to support our North Slope operations and development team. And when I say our North Slope, I mean the very tip top of Alaska. We've got a remote operations up there. We've got several thousand people who are up there working across for a variety of camps to drill and produce oil up off the North Slope. So it's a very remote operations. It's a fun group of people to work with, and I really enjoy my time up here.
Great. So Jason, let's get started on with a poll before we get into you sharing some of your experiences, right? I think the audience should be seeing a poll right now, and primarily we want to know how many of the audience members here are looking to embark on, a connected worker strategy or a connected worker journey, let's say, in the next 6 months or so. It'd be good to understand, the expectations of the audience as we get started. So we'll just give it about 30 seconds to get some responses here on the poll, and then we'll go in with the poll questions. Or the poll results, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we have some results coming in. Give it about 10 more seconds before we end the poll here. All right, so that's good. We have a good chunk of responses, and I'm going to publish the results. So, Jason, as you see, no pressure on you today, because we have close to 90% of our audience that are in this webinar looking to, embark on a connected worker strategy or a journey. And I think, your experience and expertise in this space is definitely going to add value and help the audience. With that being said, let's go into, what initiated your journey, to create the connected worker strategy for ConocoPhillips in Alaska. Jason, maybe we can start with that and go into the next discussion.
Yeah, of course. So I would tell you it's a variety of things really that led to us really wanting to go down this path with the connected worker. I think that I mentioned that our main operations, our main base of operations is up on the North Slope. So if you think about it, we have, like I mentioned, several thousand people that work up at the very top of Alaska, and it's very costly and expensive to have people fly back and forth, whether it's from our Anchorage offices here in Alaska up to the North Slope or from a variety of locations across the slope. And so the amount of money and resources it takes to get people up there and to do the work is just astronomical. And then if you look at our field, we've been in operations up here for a number of years, and the infrastructure and the amount of money it takes to get oil up out of the ground up here is very costly as well. So we're always looking for ways we can reduce that cost of supply, and we're doing that through a variety of methods. And so when we talk about the connected worker, when we talk about the value for the connected worker and all of those things, we really were looking for a way to culturally transform our operations up on the North Slope. So, ultimately what led to this being kicked off was a partnership between our IT team here in Alaska as well as our business operations team. And so they came to us and again, so I mentioned my role in support of North Slope operations. My main role there is our IT lead for, we call it a ROLA project, our Renaissance of our legacy assets. So again, our Park asset, our brownfield assets up there. How do we get more performance out of what we've already got there? So those are that's the main thing that really led to us kicking this effort off, is how do we reduce that cost of supply in our legacy asset and prolong or extend the life of the field. Some of the main drivers behind kicking off this connected worker was really looking across our variety of operations up there and saying, okay, listen, we've got a lot of manual processes today. We realize that there are a lot of technological changes that have happened over the course of the last 10 to 20 years, and we realize that we're probably not taking full advantage of them. So again, it was the remote operations. How do we do things better? How do we change, or how do we make our operations more efficient by reducing manual processes? And how do we look at leveraging the changes and opportunities with regard to the technology that's out there?
Great. I know that's pretty much a common theme that personally I'm seeing in the industries as well, right? A lot of manual processes, how to get rid of those. And, the one thing that, I didn't see on your list, Jason, that you brought up is, how do you manage the gap that is being formed with, an aging frontline workforce, right? There was a survey done by the Manufacturing Institute where the average median age of the frontline workers was, almost 45 years, and that number is actually going up. With a millennial workforce coming into the picture, we see a lot of large enterprises investing heavily on in-house training and learning courses, of course, with on-the-job training, right? But the pace of change is still exceeding the capability of those training programs, right? And where we're seeing is, how do we provide technology and tools to these frontline workers, let's say wearable headsets, to provide over-the-shoulder guidance, right? Do you see technology coming into play here with where you're at in Alaska and helping kind of this transition that's happening?
Absolutely, and I think that it's an interesting problem to have, right? So you hit the nail on the head when we talk about the aging workforce and really what that looks like. So I think that as you look across employees as they're coming into a company, the average employee has had access to a smart device, whether it's a tablet or a phone or whatever, across the majority of their life. And so the expectation when they come into a new area is, hey, I'm going to be able to take advantage of these technologies and be able to do work, the way I'm used to doing it. And they come in and they realize that's just not the case. It's not how we've been doing work, or it's not how work gets done up here. And it's an interesting conundrum, right? Because I mean, the people that have been up, the people that have been working for 20 or 30 years, they know what they're doing, they know how to do it, and they know how to do it, in a efficient manner for themselves because they've been doing it for so long. But somebody coming in who needs to be picking up that wrench for the first time or what that looks like, this just doesn't make sense to them. Why are we not taking advantage of these tools that we have access to? So you're absolutely right, and it's a struggle, and I think that that's one of the main challenges that we have here in Alaska, and one that we've had to continually work to address is just that cultural shift. How do we make it okay to do things differently, and help everyone in the workforce realize that that's okay to do?
Absolutely, and yeah, that's not a simple task, and
it isn't. No.
All right. So, which leads us to, some of the obstacles that, you probably saw as you started this project, and what actual obstacles did you encounter along the way during this journey, Jason?
Yeah, and I mentioned it just a minute ago, but I'll reiterate because I know we knew it was going to be there, but it's been an incredible struggle to get past it. So the first big obstacle is going to be that cultural change. How do you drive the need or helping say the operators or helping the technicians or helping whoever it is out in the field understand that it's okay to be doing things differently. It's okay to look at how we can make our jobs more efficient. It's okay to look at what it would look like maybe to bring that role from being right there in front of the pump or right there in front of the facility off and working remotely. I won't admit to having all the answers there because I don't think that there is any one way to do that. But I tell you, that's been the biggest change or the biggest struggle we've had. Just culturally, how do we change the way we do work? The second biggest challenge I think we knew we had, and we've realized as we've worked through this connected worker, is that we're going to continually have to change things, is the technologies that are out there. So I mentioned that our operations are up on the North Slope of Alaska. Getting connectivity up there is a struggle. It's it's not necessarily that the technology is not there, but the cost to outfit all of our facilities with, let's say, Wi-Fi or cellular connectivity, some sort of connectivity that they can use to access the devices. So, we talk about the different workflows, different processes we may have up on the slope, but it's interesting is that they don't have, even if we wanted to put a tablet in their hands and say, okay, go do X, Y, and Z up on the slope, do we have the connectivity that they need in the facility standing there in front of the piece of equipment to get the work done? And we knew that was going to be a challenge, before we kicked off this journey, and it still is. We're working through it. I think we've identified ways that we can get around that in some cases, whether it's offline, online capability of tools, or maybe it's how do we streamline some of the processes up front so that whenever they're out there in front of the piece of equipment, there is really maybe there's no need for them to have that connectivity? Or is it going to be that we're going to make the infrastructure investments up front in some cases so that we can build that connectivity there for them to use? And then the third major obstacle that we've faced is just the ROI on the investment here. Whenever we talk about if we're going to stand up new infrastructure, we're going to put new pieces of software in our employees' hands, or maybe we're going to put new pieces of technology like a smartphone or a RealWear headset or you name it, right? I mean, putting that technology in their hands, there's an upfront cost there. So how do we justify the money that we're going to spend up front in getting those workers connected and getting those processes changed? From that standpoint, if you look at that ROI and say, maybe there is no quick return on investment there. So, or maybe it's a foundational piece that you have to do that you can't really put any kind of value on up front, or you can't tie any tangible value to it up front, but you have to do it so that you can enable some of these things downstream later on. It's a tough challenge. It's things that we knew were going to be there, and we've had to continually work through as we've engaged with not only the workers across our field, but leadership here at Conoco as well, helping them understand and helping us move forward.
No, absolutely. I think those are I think this is kind of a common theme that even we're seeing across the board, right? How do you drive value and how do you prove value of, such a large initiative, right? And, the cultural and technological piece absolutely comes into play. What we've seen is, the technological piece can be solved, right? You can have technology in terms of hardware, software, and connectivity and solve all of that. But the cultural piece is something that, it takes change management, it takes experience to get these users adapt from, going from using, let's say, paper to using a tablet or using, a wearable device, right? And one thing that you brought up earlier on, Jason, which again is something that you said, it's a lot of this mentality about, my way is being the right way. But the problem is what happens if that person leaves the organization and then, now you have a new person there that doesn't know what that right way is, right? And this is where we're seeing, a big risk that a lot of organizations are embraced. They're looking at this as the next opportunity. How do we consolidate, all of those, historical knowledge and information that's with this experienced workforce, and how do we bring that into an easily consumable form that somebody that's fresh out of college today can consume. And definitely, paper and documentation on paper is not that. And getting that tribal knowledge into a digital format is something that that we see, as an important pillar of that, building that value and that business case. How do you see that shaping up in your organization there, Jason? Do you see kind of digital work instructions and all of that forming a key component of your connected worker program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's incredibly important. I'd say, in terms of where we are from a priority standpoint, we tackle a few other things first, just in terms of getting oil up out of the ground. But in terms of retaining that knowledge and understanding, how do we train that next wave of our workforce? It's going to be instrumental to have, whether it's technology in their hands, maybe it's training videos, maybe it's remote guidance from experts that have been doing it for 10 or 15 years, 20 years in the field. Having that technology in their hands so that they can have access to those videos, to somebody in the ear saying, hey, check this, do this, or give them step-by-step instructions on what they're supposed to be doing, is going to be critical in terms of training that next wave of our workforce. So yeah, I'd say it's absolutely a key pillar in terms of how we enable our connected worker going forward here at Conoco.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about how you went about your process, right? What factors did you consider during your due diligence and investigation process as you were looking for a connected worker solution to meet your needs?
Yeah, and so I'll switch hats a little bit, right? So I support our business and I dive into the weeds of our process quite a bit. But then on the flip side, I get to wear my IT hat during the day, and so we had a lot of technology questions that we really needed to tick the boxes on before we got started in terms of looking at solutions. So primarily, really what we were looking at is how is a system, how would a technology solution or system, integrate in with our various, ERP solutions we've got here at Conoco. So we're in the midst from a corporate standpoint of looking at, changing the way that we do things a little bit. And so, any solution that we had needed to check quite a few boxes in terms of being able to integrate with a variety of systems. So that's number one. We were looking for just that flexibility of integration, whether it was going to be one system or multiple. It needed to be able to integrate. The next question that we really had was just in terms of, was it cloud enabled? So we're, not only are we looking at changing some of the backbones infrastructure that we've got here at Conoco, but we're also looking at, what can we take from on-prem systems and move off into a more cloud-based ecosystem here at Conoco. So that was very important that any solution that we chose was cloud-based. And then for us, it was kind of a double-edged sword. So while we don't want to do a lot of customization, we still wanted the ability, whatever tool we use, whatever solution we chose, we needed it to be customizable. We wanted it not only to work for our Alaska business unit, but also potentially work for any of our other business units across the globe. So we didn't want to box ourselves in and find a tool that was only going to be supported here in Alaska. We wanted to make sure that we had an enterprise mindset when we were going through that selection criteria. So those are the three, probably the main key points that we were looking for when we were talking about a solution. And that's just on the IT side. So, I think I'd take a step back though. And while I mentioned that we had a bunch of, technical related questions, at the end of the day, the technology is the technology. And you're not going to see the value captured across our organization by just implementing a new technology. You don't do that without looking and saying, okay, how do we change the way that we're doing the work that we've got today? If we just stick technology on top of the processes we've got today, we're doing ourselves an injustice. And quite frankly, we're probably not seeing any value at all. It's just a shiny toy that we can stick on top of things and say, hey, we put something new out there. So what we've really done is said, okay, what are we really trying to change? What are we really trying to shift? And what processes can we change or make more efficient or even cut out in some cases so that we can really drive the value home in the work that we're doing. So we took a step back. And so whenever we asked the questions, we said, not only what technology is it that, how does the technology work for us? But also, does this technology fit these pillars that we've set up for ourselves? And when I say pillar, I just mean we've identified 4 or 5 key business processes, like say pillars, themes, whatever you want to call them, that we want to make sure that a new solution would be able to handle or meet. So the first one being digital field data capture. That was an important one. So could we have our employees or contractors, whatever that looks like, they're in the field with a smart device in their hand, capturing data right there at the point of contact for whatever it is that they're looking at. The second one being, could we enable our workers to have access to their process and procedure documentation as it pertains to the work that they're doing in the field, right? So instead of sitting at their desk in the mornings getting a paper printout of whatever it is that they're trying to work or look at, and then going out to the field doing their work and hoping that they printed the right stuff out or they had the right information at their fingertips, and if not, hey, could I get in contact with somebody back at the home office and hopefully they have the information I wanted to look at. Well, no, how can we just give them that information at their fingertips when they're there doing the work? The third and really one of the biggest transformational shifts we're trying to change is just how do we digitize our maintenance activities? So whether it's the automation of work that's in the system, or how do we streamline who's doing what in the field, or we give just-in-time access to work that needs to be done to the employees that are closest to the work that needs to be done, the important, maybe it's the critical work, the breakdowns, the shutdowns, whatever that looks like in the field. And then the other one is just how do we enable remote work, right? I mean, how do we take that employee who maybe that's that skilled technician that's there in the field, how do we take them out of the field? Maybe we put them in a central office, and we instead of having five skilled technicians that are sitting there waiting for work or executing work in the field, maybe we go down to 2 or 3 of them that are there maybe in a central office that can say hey, I'm going to direct the hands on the boots on the ground from a central point, and I can get more work done by not being there actually out in the field. So there's 4 or 5 themes that we're really trying to tackle, and I think that we still have a lot of work to do in this space in terms of fleshing those out completely and making sure that we're affecting the proper change that we're looking for. But really, that is a lot of the things that we invest in. A lot of the factors we investigated in terms of identifying a solution, really moving forward. Here with the connected worker.
Great. I think, key points that you brought up, right? Thing that resonated the most with me is, the business needs, aligning the business needs to the technology, right? And, the 4 things that you mentioned, absolutely, form the core of any connected worker solution. And I think, you've chosen Innovapptive here in this space, to start off. And how important do you see, the connectivity to the ERP amongst all of this? And you're using SAP as your ERP, right? Did that form kind of a basis of your decision making as well, Jason, or did that not factor that too much?
No, it did. It played an important factor, and I think that's the big questions that ConocoPhillips has to answer over the next few years. Is are we going to stick with the current offering, or are we looking at other solutions as well? So as we talk through that integration approach, we want to make sure that whatever solution we chose would be able to interface, whether it's with our legacy systems that we talk about today, or any other system potentially going forward. So yeah, absolutely, it played an important piece.
Great. All right, so we have another poll for our audience here. So this one's, let's talk about benefits a bit here, right? And how does our audience perceive the most important benefit of implementing a connected worker solution or implementing the connected worker strategy? So we have 4 options, one being worker safety, improved frontline visibility, better real-time decision-making, and increased data accuracy. I think all 4 are extremely important, but we'd see if how things rank up when you have to choose just one. So we'll give it a few seconds here.
Sri, what do you think is going to come out on top?
I think it would be a mix between safety and real-time decision making, I guess. But we'll wait for the results here. What do you think, Jason?
I don't want to influence the results. I think that you're absolutely right. I think safety is going to be a key one, but I would say increased data accuracy, because I think you can't do the kind of work you want to do without having that data backbone to feed into your processes. Yeah.
All right. We'll give it 5 more seconds before we publish the results here.
All right. Nobody change your answer because we gave you guys our thoughts.
Yeah. All right. So here, I think 50% of the audience feel like the real-time decision making is critical. In terms of implementing. So it is, how do you bring the results from the from the connected worker solution in the hands of the stakeholders, and how do you enable decision making from there? That's a key thing, and I know that's something that you're looking at as well. The decision making capabilities. So that's an interesting response there.
No, absolutely, and it's a difficult thing to try to quantify, right? Whenever we talk about the connected worker and whether it's a strategy in place for ConocoPhillips Alaska, or we talk about the connected worker and it's just a matter of changing the way we do work. It's what is the value that we're trying to drive to our organization? Does it help? Does it directly put money in our pockets? In some cases, I'd say yes. In some cases, no, it's not going to be a tangible value. But the kind of things we foresaw that we'd be able to get at Conoco in terms of value is really the increased efficiency by not only our operations team, but our maintenance team and our drilling team in terms of getting information in their hands, reduce our HSE risk. Absolutely 100% there, right? So I mean, if you look at the overall program and maybe where we maybe this nirvana state 5 years from now or whatever this looks like, here it's going to be that ultimately reducing the amount of people we necessarily need to do operations up on our North Slope asset. And by reducing the number of people that we have up there, you inherently reduce your HSE risk just by having not as many people there. So that's a big one. Increase our tool time and decrease the drive time between our assets is going to be a huge one as well, right? And we mentioned it earlier, but if you give people the information at their fingertips right there in front of them, there's no risk that they're going to get out there and not have the information that they need and have to drive back, right? That's wasted hours, wasted time where those employees could be doing work that's value adding to the organization. We talked about processes. So as we go through this journey, we were looking to streamline the processes we have out there, right? I mean, maybe instead of 5 touch points before work gets done, maybe there's 3 touch points, or 2 touch points if we can get down to that point, right? I mean, if you can automate some workflows, if you can reduce people out of the process, if you could, you name it, you're inherently going to get the work done faster. But it's just a matter of how can we do that and do that in a safe, efficient manner. And then the big one, I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about the poll results, and I absolutely agree with the audience in terms of having access to the data right there at their fingertips. The point that we've tried to drive home to our organization, though, is that just having access to data at their fingertips is one thing, but you have to make sure that the data accuracy is there so that the data is meaningful when they have it at their fingertips, right? So, and that's where we get to some of those, data capture, field data capture pieces we talked about earlier, right? So you start with those to a degree so that you can drive home, better data, making sure that the systems are up to date with the latest data that we have, and the most accurate, right? Are we capturing information down at our equipment level at the appropriate equipment, or is the data still being captured at a field level, right? Where it's like, okay, well, what was this? I don't understand. How do we drive home? Is this equipment failing multiple times, or is it not failing multiple times? It's multiple pieces of equipment, but we just don't have because we didn't have a piece of a phone in our hands where we could just immediately capture what was wrong. We went back to the office, wrote down, and we forgot what equipment it was, or maybe we didn't forget, but we didn't have a way to capture that. So, to me, that improved or increased data accuracy only lends itself to helping out everything downstream of it from that point forward.
Great. No, that's I think good indication of the direction that you're planning to take this, and seeing how it's at end of the day, it's like you said, you have to prove the ROI and the business value, and I think this gives us a good idea of some of the key value drivers that you're targeting at and you're focused on. Great. So as we come to kind of the last question here, let's maybe you can talk a little more about what the future looks like. Looks like you're off to a great start there in Alaska. Can you share how you're planning for the future and what the next few years looks like for the Connected Worker program there?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'd say it's still evolving over time. I think that's one thing that we've realized is we can't just put a plan out there on paper and get sign off, and then all of a sudden it's going to work exactly like we wanted to. So it's an evergreen plan. But for us, what we've really done is we've sought, I say our slope leadership, but our operations leadership team, buy-in and alignment with them, and said, okay, if we're going to do this and do this right, we need to get your support. So from an operational leadership, so you guys are the backbone that tells the employees culturally, technologically, whatever that may be, this is the way we're going to do things going forward, and you get in line or move on. And then from that point, we've stood up a governance team across the slope consisting of our business leadership, operations leadership, our IT leadership, and really any connected oil field work process, technology, is it a wearable in somebody's hands? Is it a process we want to digitize? Is it are we eliminating steps in the process? It goes through the steering team in terms of identifying priorities for us to work on over the next 2 to 3 years. So we've stood this team up. We are actively looking and road mapping for the next couple of years as it pertains to the various themes we talked about. And then, we're looking to progress things as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, with the mindset of, where's oil at? What do we, from a capacity standpoint, what can we do and do well, from that perspective? So, I think that we're off to a good start. We've got a lot of people, really geared up and ready to get going on this. And we're just excited to get going. And then at the
Great.
same time, I will mention this before. Sorry, Shri, didn't mean to cut you off, but I think it's important to note that we're one business unit within ConocoPhillips, right? So we're not the only ones that are looking at really executing work in this space at Conoco. So not only are we looking to try to do what's best for ConocoPhillips Alaska, but we're also trying to do this in the most informed manner so that we can really look to leverage what we learn here across our global organizations as well. So, right. So we don't want to just operate in a vacuum. We don't want to, just go run off and do things because Alaska says this is the way we need to go. We really want to work hand in hand with our corporate and with our global partners here at ConocoPhillips and make sure that we do what's best for the company, right? So as we look at solutions, is this solution going to work well for our other assets, and can we quickly leverage what we've learned or what we've done to stand up some similar things in other areas? So, not only are we having the internal strategy conversations here in ConocoPhillips Alaska, but we're also having the conversations with our other businesses, making sure that we're all staying lockstep and we're all learning from each other on a constant basis.
Absolutely. Step one is to prove value up there in Alaska, and then if it works, scale rapidly to the global organization. No, absolutely. And thanks for the insightful discussion, Jason. I think everything that you've shared, in a very concise manner, is definitely going to help our audience. With that, I think we'll turn it over to Q&A. We'll see what questions, and to the audience, if you have any questions, either for Jason or myself, feel free to type that into the Q&A box, and we'd be happy to answer that for you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Tree. So we do have a question here, which is, can you speak more about your implementation timelines?
Yes, it's a great question. I think that what we're looking to do is we're in the middle of several pilots across our asset, and so ultimately what we'd like to do is have these pilots executed by the end of this year. In terms of say one of the pilots we're looking at that we're running currently is getting devices in the hands of our field workers and then executing work with those devices. So it's the operations team being able to capture work notifications. So if they're out there doing their daily work and then they see something's broken, can they capture and enter that information down to the specific equipment as quickly as possible and get that into our system so that the maintenance work can be scheduled and we can reduce the cycle time between when something's identified as broken and when that work actually gets done. So we're looking to have that wrapped up and really the team working on that, working with those tools in their hands in the fourth quarter of this year. And then, going forward from there, assuming everything is successful there, we would look to rapidly roll that out in the first part of next year. So that's our goal. That's the best laid plans right there. And then ultimately we've got I'd say several other key initiatives that we're looking to kick off and would be running throughout 2021. So we've got a backlog of things that we're working on and looking to do, and I think it's just a matter of seeing these things become successful, and then as they pick up steam and people start seeing the value in them, I think that they're really going to take off.
Great. Thank you, Jason. The next question we have is, how are you handling change management with the introduction of the Connected Worker solution?
So it's an interesting dynamic, right? And we talked about the cultural implications earlier on in our conversation. But what we're really finding is that as the workers are getting these technologies in their hands, whether it's the smartphones, whether it's the tablets, whether it's the headsets, the initial pushback that, hey, this isn't going to provide value and this isn't going to do anything for me, starts to dissipate. So I think the first step is getting the solutions in their hands, and the second step is really making sure that you work hand in hand. It doesn't work, and again, I'm going to put my IT hat on, but it doesn't work if you give them a technological solution and then you step back and say, okay, have fun with it. We're going to move on and do the next thing. that engagement is critical. So it's a matter of you give it to them, you work with them, you check in, you stay working hand in hand with them, making sure that the things that they're looking to do, the things that they are we're hoping to achieve with them are working. What we found is that if you stay engaged through that entire process and not just handing it off and moving on, the adoption's a lot higher. And so, the first bit is just getting them over the hurdle of, hey, this isn't going to provide any value to me, or this is going to make my job harder, or this is going to, I don't understand why you're doing this. And then once it's in their hands and they start using it and they realize, hey, you know what, this does make my life easier. Hey, I can do X, Y, and Z with it. And it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic as well, right? Because once they get those devices in their hands, the information, so that instead of just saying, I can only do this one thing with it, now all of a sudden it's, hey, what about these other 5 things that would be a lot easier? So it gets the wheels spinning, and ultimately once the technology's in their hands, we found that it's almost now you have to put the brakes and say, okay, well, whoa, we want to let's before you go off and do these other 3 things, let's make sure that this is the right way to go about doing the work, right? So I mean, it's funny. It's an interesting dynamic. Once they're working with it, it's the change management and working in it successful and it does exactly what it is that they need it to do. We find that they want to just keep using it and move as fast as possible.
Great. Thank you, Jason. The next question I have is, what devices or hardware are compatible with the Innovapptive solution?
Yeah.
So, sure. I'll let you take that one.
Jason. Yeah. So, and then maybe you can share your experience as well, right? So this is an important piece, right? In terms of when you spoke about change management and getting users to adopt the technology and start using it is important for the value generation, right? So one thing that we've noticed is make it as close to a consumer solution as possible. Meaning, let's say when we talk about, running the solution, the user interface, right, should be able to run on your most commercial iOS or Android devices, but at the same time address complex enterprise needs like what we're doing there in Alaska, right? Making it work on intrinsically safe devices, right? Or for some of our warehouse management use cases, make it compatible with the ruggedized barcode scanners and those kind of RF hardware. We're also doing the integration with wearable devices, making it work on, devices like the RealWear HMTs, where you can, workers can pretty much work hands-free. So one thing that we definitely see is having a wide variety of device support, and we're doing that. And maybe Jason, you can talk more about, the specific requirements that you've seen from your end in the field and what you're doing on that front.
Yeah, so we've examined a number of devices and offerings, and I think that ultimately we're not we're pretty device agnostic when it comes to what we need to work successfully in the field. I think we've landed on the current trials we're looking at are on Android-based operating systems, which are great. But again, it's without speaking about specific products, and I think maybe if anybody has any questions around specific hardware, you guys feel free to reach out to me afterwards. But ultimately we've landed on Android, and I guess the most important thing for us in terms of devices in the field really was, were they intrinsically safe, right? So we have some requirements that any device we have to use across any of our facilities, they needed to be class 1, div 1 intrinsically safe devices, right? So it really limits your options for what you have available to you in the field. But in terms of anything that we needed, that was the most important, was that they're intrinsically safe and that they're going to be supportable by our organization. Especially, like we mentioned earlier, right? Our operations are slope-based, right? So if we have to support those, whether we support them on site or we support them from our Anchorage-based offices, we needed a way to do that reliably.
Great.
Great. Thank you both. All right. So thank you, Shri and Jason, for that interesting and informative webinar. If the audience would like to listen again, this webinar will be available on demand shortly. Finally, thank you to wherever you are for taking the time to listen in, and remember to check out more of our upcoming and on-demand webinars at oilandgasiq.com. Enjoy the rest of your day.